Geneace, our wonderful storyteller today. I'm going to open up by asking you why that song?
Let me just start by saying, I don't know how many folks actually watched it, but at the funeral of Jimmy Carter, I'll never forget the opening line of his grandson Jason's reflections. He said this. He said, "In my church, we sing a song that says, 'From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God.'" And then he said, "I don't know how many people here can say that. I know I can't, but my grandfather certainly can. From the moment that he woke up until he laid his head, his life was a testament to the goodness of God. And this is how I would like my life to be reflected. The goodness of something or someone much greater than me that impacts my life and in turn causes me to impact the lives of others. And that's why I selected that song.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Geneace. And welcome, everyone. I am so happy to see a full room of new faces, old friends. I haven't been here for a few months. I was on maternity leave, and I'm back at it, thrown here. I'm going to be hosting by myself today. Jeff won't be here, my partner in this. But I'm just so happy to be back and to be back among friends. This is my favorite day of the month, every month. So yes, and Geneace, I can imagine a more perfect person to have with us as our storyteller. So happy to be joined by you today. And as those of you who have been here before know, we're going to go straight into breakout rooms here in a bit. But for those who perhaps are joining for the first time, we do start very quickly with connection. Connection before content is kind of our mantra here. So I will be opening up the breakout rooms in about 1 minute, and the question for those breakout rooms is going to be, why did you choose to show up here today? And we will have about 12 minutes with groups of 3 to 4 people. So in just about one, I will say also to preface with my own connection, I'm a bit sleep deprived. So if at any point I take a little bit of time, that's why. So here we go. I will be opening up just now. And yes, thank you, Wissam, so much. The question is, why did you choose to show up here today? 1, 2, 3, and you'll be heading there now. Hi, welcome back, everyone. Everyone else should be slowly pouring back into the main room. Hope that you had a
I,
nice
I
conversation.
left inadvertently from my room and I felt like I abandoned my conversation partner. So I'm
That does
sorry.
happen.
Sorry, Molly,
Okay,
Diane, and
Ryan.
Nikki. Thank you. Thank you for your grace.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So I thought we wouldn't have to pin anyone. Oh, here's Geneace. I could find her. We've got such a full room that I was like, oh, we can't find Geneace. There she is. Um, so welcome back, everyone. I hope that you had nice, nourishing small group sessions. I gave you guys a little bit of extra time. I said 12 minutes, but you got 15. So I hope that was nice. And John, happy to see you. Sorry to see you go, but we'll see you next month. Um, so just for a couple of minutes, does anybody want to unmute and say what struck you about the conversations that you just had with each other, your small groups? You can unmute, you can raise your virtual hand, raise your real hand. Try to find you.
In my group, it was good morning, everyone.
Good morning, John.
In my group, it was fun in that like the last 3 minutes or 4 minutes of our time together, we all realized we're in similar industry. Which is nice.
Anyone else? What struck you about your conversations?
What struck me is that I didn't really know what industries we were all in, and that was totally okay with me. There were little hints there, but I was so happy to be there and just in the connection.
Yeah, I guess in my group, it was more on the connecting part throughout different journeys and the simple ways of being here, just like opening up discussions. I mean, everyone had a smile.
I'll share. In my group, we connected around what we're currently practicing in our daily practice in life and, expanding, in ways that make us feel more powerful and aligned.
Wonderful. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce formally Geneace Williams, Dr. Geneace Williams, who is our storyteller today. I first got connected with Geneace because of some incredible work that she was doing in Naperville, Illinois, which we'll let her talk about a little bit more. But upon our first connection, I discovered that she has quite the rich tapestry of experiences. I added in the from an attorney to pastor, teacher, and scholar, and so much more that we're going to discover just now. I am so happy to welcome Geneace Williams as our storyteller. And I'm going to ask you, Geneace, first and foremost, why did you choose to be on the journey that you're on?
So let me back up a little bit as I try and respond to your question. I'll look this way because it's funny when I'm looking my head up. I spent about 2 decades in the practice of law before I started on the journey of doing equity focused work. And so I describe myself to most people that I meet as a recovering attorney. I didn't leave the practice of law because I hated it. I accomplished some things while practicing law that I'm very proud of. But I left the practice of law because I was being redirected into more fulfilling work that I thought would enrich the lives of others in a myriad of ways, including socially and spiritually. And so, after many years of living and doing many things, I guess I finally learned the importance of being all that I can in every space that I am in. And so, this is the space that feels most authentic to me, the space that I feel that I'm called to, and that will help me make the most difference in the lives of people. And so that's why I'm on the journey that I'm on.
Amazing. And when we talked a few weeks ago, you said that something that is integral to your journey is leading with love. And that just really struck me. So I wonder, what were the milestones? What were some of the milestones in your life that have stood out for
So,
you?
a couple of things. So let me go back and say that when I first came to Naperville, and for those who don't know, I lead diversity, equity, and inclusion for the City of Naperville. Yes, even in a day and a time where those are bad words. They're not bad words here. And I'm proud of the work that we do into the community. But when I came here, from doing some other consulting work and out of the practice of law, I started with this whole idea of a learning journey, right? So it was let me learn as much as I can about the city, and so I started on this tour of learning, and as I learned more about the city and learned more about the people in the city, two things sort of rose up in me in terms of how to approach the work. And those two things have been my mantra since then. And the first is to build relationships. And so during that listening tour or that learning tour, I spent so much time really trying to build relationships with people because you cannot do the work, this kind of work. You can't do any kind of work that requires you to be connected to people unless you are in relationship with others. And so it was be in relationship with others and lead with love. In other words, it wouldn't do me any good to come in and beat my chest about we should be doing this and we should be doing that. But by being having a loving personality and having the kind of personality that would draw people in to what it was that I was seeing as the vision for the work, I thought would work out best. And so in everything that I have done in the 4.5 years that I have been here in the city of Naperville, working has been about relationships and about leading with love. And so if I go back to my childhood, I'm going to connect all of this. And so my parents taught us, all five of us, that love really makes a difference. And that doesn't mean that I need to walk around the world, hugging everybody. And it doesn't mean that. It means that I come to my work, I come to my life, I come to my journey with a certain sense of um, I'm here for people. I'm here to be involved in my community. I'm here to do good. And much of that has to be led by or must be centered in the idea that there's something about love that draws people in. And so that was the very first milestone was what my parents taught us coming up. And I was the last of five. And so people will say that a whole lot of love got dumped on me as the youngest, but that's really where it all started. And then sort of my journey through life, I was called to ministry while I was practicing law. And so that's another milestone in my life. I can't say that that I'm a minister of the gospel and not love people, right? So everything that I do is sort of connected to this idea that I've got to love. And so lawyer, minister, childhood. Um, when I wrote my first book, scholar, teacher, every inclusion expert, everything points back to people. And so if everything points back to people, even now, as I told the group that I was talking with earlier, that we have 4 core values here at the City of Naperville. Um, People, respect, trust, and pride. So everything in my life, for all of my life, has led back to people. And when it leads back to people, it's got to start with love. And if it doesn't, then you'll end up with the kind of chaos that we're dealing with.
And part of what you mentioned is about leading with love is showing up as your full self and bringing your full self in everything that you do. Can you talk a little bit more about that and
Yeah,
how you show up as your full self?
so I'll tell you two things. Um, when I was working as a full-time attorney, one of the persons who worked on my team said to me one day out of the clear blue that you would connect better with people if you brought your whole self to work. And I'm trying to think about what the heck is he talking about if I do bring my whole self to work. But what he really meant was, I've had such varying experiences, and to bring the value of all of those experiences to bear on not just the work that I do, but the relationships that I build with the people that work around me, for me, above me, et cetera. It didn't matter. That's just a greater way of connecting with people when people can see all of you. And so he made me really start to think about how I was showing up and whether or not I was showing up in the full me. And I did a talk back in 2022 for a Catholic church here in town. And one of the things that I said to them was, I probably, for most of my professional life, had been living a divided life, right? It was, no one will know that I'm a minister when I'm over here doing law work, and when I'm over here being a minister, nobody needs to know that I'm a lawyer, etc., and whatever else that I did, and getting my PhD and then teaching. Nobody needs to know all of those different things. But I figured out that there was something of value in each of those experiences, right? So, for example, the lawyer gave me the ability to think critically, to advocate vigorously, to give voice to others. The ministry increased my ability to be compassionate, and it allowed me to increase my sphere of influence, and it helped me to help people deal with the disappointments of life. It taught me resilience. Being a scholar and a teacher, it taught me that it's important to be a lifelong learner. My dad used to say when we were growing up that whenever you stop learning, it's time to bury you because you're dead. And so from that, I became a lifelong learner. And so as a lifelong learner, I'm always trying to learn more. And not only am I trying to learn more, I'm trying to share more with others so that they too can grow. And so I just finally figured out, probably 3 or 4 years ago, that it's important that every piece of that follow everything. And so when I finally learned that, that was the transformative piece of my journey. That was what really taught me that now I can help a community transform because I figured out how to be transformed myself. Um, so that's kind of how I came to understanding the importance of bringing my whole self. Years ago, I would have never, ever started a conversation with a gospel song. I would have been like, oh no, but I bring my whole self, and that's a part of me.
And as you move through your work in community, bringing your full self, hopefully, and having other people bring their full selves into the work as well. And what, I guess it's hard to ask this question these days because there's so much that's surprising that's negative, right? About the world that we're in at the moment. But what continues to surprise you as you engage people in this kind of work and community?
So what continues to surprise me is that for every piece of intolerance that I see, for every negative piece that comes forward out of somebody's mouth, the next person that I come across is tolerant, is giving, is kind, is generous, wants to engage. And so there's this counter to the negativity that's coming forth. There's this counter. And that counter is what gives us all hope, that things will get better, things are getting better, things will continue to get better, et cetera. And so that's kind of what I hold on to, is that for every negative, there is a positive. And I try to hold on to the positive because the positive is what helps me. And I'll go back and say a little bit about One of the things that connected me to Peter was we decided to, I came across his book, Community, The Structure of Belonging, the edition from 2018, and I read it, and then I introduced it to the community, and we did a community-wide book read, and then we also did a version of it for the employees here. And one of the things that Peter says in that book is that you have to stop focusing on the problems, but the possibilities. And so I'm trying to connect with people who believe in the possibilities. And by connecting with the people who believe in the possibility, right? And what we can accomplish together, then much more comes from that, much more positive comes from that. And I will also say that one of the things that I am probably most proud of is that I've invited every different community within this community to join this work. And surprisingly, the faith community has really shown up because normally they just stay in the church. Let's stay over here. Let's do what it is we do. But they've embraced this idea of the, their work must extend into the community and they can be a part of what we build here. And so they're helping me to shape what does it look like to focus on the possibilities and to focus on the gifts that people bring to the table versus what's wrong with our community, what's wrong with the people in our community. How do we approach this from the standpoint of what are the possibilities? And that has really sort of shaped shaped the focus, shaped, I think, what the outcomes will be. It's just that whole mindset, and then pushing that mindset out into the community and into every part of what I do in the work.
It's kind of interesting because I guess if we think about everything as like a spiral, you bring your full self to your work and the work that you do as an individual. And in neighborhoods, we can also find a way to bring the full self of what it makes a neighborhood, right? So that could be, I don't know if that makes sense, but what it could be is you have all of the institutions or groups that make up a neighborhood working and showing up as their full selves. Perhaps that's important for neighborhoods, and I think that that's what's really interesting about what you say as a faith community showing up in this work, because it all really does go hand in hand.
It does, and I think it's really important that as one who is charged with the responsibility of leading a charge, if you don't show up as your full self and don't invite others to show up and bring all of who they are, then it doesn't incentivize people to come together and really to accept people for who they are and to allow people to bring whatever their gifts are and to use those gifts in the community, to use those gifts to uplift the work. It's because sometimes I think we miss the value in what others bring because we have these preconceived notions about people based upon who we think that they are without allowing them to just come in, be who they are, do what it is they do, and offer what they have to offer, right? Because we have boxed people into our view of them and our view of what comes from this person or this community. And I think one of the things I learned is I've got to dispel all of that. And I've got to start with that as the one charged with leading it so that I can set the example for others that this is a judgment-free zone. And we allow people to come in as they are and to contribute to the work as they do. And it makes it much more rich. And I think that what happens also is that we learn that helps us to learn how to accept people without trying to make them into what it is that we think they ought to be.
Absolutely.
That's leading with love. That's quintessential leading with love.
Yeah. And I guess you kind of touched on it, but then for you, what does success look like?
I think if I were to think about what success looks like, um, it's really people coming together respectfully, coming together with one goal in mind, and that is we're building this community and we're building this community together. And we allow voices that differ, right? Voices that differ are welcomed in this conversation. It's just that when voices come that differ, we handle the conversations, we deal with the conversations in respectful manners, right? That we respect one another. We give people opportunities to speak. We give people opportunities to disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable in our disagreement. And so it really is learning how to bring a full community together of people who might differ in their beliefs, might differ in their approach, but somehow we figure out how to manage to build something together that is for the good of the whole community. And it's not easy. And some people will opt out, and that's okay. It's okay. I've always had the mindset that I start with those who show up. So I don't have any preconceived notions about what they look like, what they say, how they'll respond, etc. I start with those who show up because those who show up with a willing spirit. And then we work from there. And hopefully we can invite others into that group, into that circle, and the circle grows and it grows and it grows. But we have to start with respect. And I have to say to you, I have to be honest and say, I haven't always been respected, even here in my community. Because there are some people who, if they disagree with you, then it's got to turn into ugly. And I just don't live my life that way. And so I try to set this kind of tone so that we can build some success together, but build it around the idea of respecting others and inviting others into the circle. Because I can't do this by myself, and neither can any one or two people. It takes all of us to build up the community and to make the community better. About 30% or so of Naperville is diverse, people of all kinds of backgrounds, and that doesn't even count people who are, um, um, the difference in ages. It doesn't count people with who are differently able. These are just people who culturally are different. When probably over half of our community are people who have some difference. And so there's got to be a way that you approach that that's open and honest and welcoming. And I'll say this and then I'll be quiet. Um, a year and a half ago, we did something called the Human Library. And the Human Library is an opportunity to invite people in who are different, to be able to tell their story to small groups of people. And we had over 100 stories told during the course, or the people told their story over 100 times during the course of a day when we had this event. And it was co-sponsored by Neighbor Pride and the Naperville Library. And we still get positive feedback because when you actually sit down and talk to somebody who's different than you'll find that you actually have more in common than you thought you did. And when we find those commonalities and when we focus on those commonalities and allow that to move us forward versus our difference, then we can go a whole lot further.
That sounds amazing. That human library sounds really cool. I want to be a part. Did you find, just out of curiosity, did you find that people maybe discovered that their own gifts in the process of telling their story.
Absolutely. But some people said they found themselves. In fact, I will tell you this. So one of the persons who was part of the people telling their story is an African American woman who stutters. And she rose to be a principal of a junior high school, actually in the town that I grew up in. And then she came over to Naperville to work for one of the school districts. And in telling her story about having the stuttering issue and going all the way through school to get her doctorate, right? And all of the challenges that she had throughout life. But she felt so empowered after that experience and after being received by the people who listened to her story that she actually started getting really involved with there's a stuttering association. And so she's been doing speaking for them, and she recently wrote a book. And so she absolutely found her voice in that experience. And when you can help somebody find their voice and that they can go out and make the difference in the lives of people, that's kind of amazing because then it's the kind of thing, it's the gift that keeps giving, right? And so we all want to take our gift and allow it to keep giving so that other people can grow and find themselves.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect, and it allows, I guess, people to know that they're not like stuttering. We're told our whole lives that that could be perhaps a problem to be solved. Well, maybe if we can actually see that it's not a problem to be solved, it's a beautiful gift and a possibility to bring and to work through with others. That's amazing. What a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing. I'm gonna look into that, and thanks Wissam for sharing the link in the chat too for anybody else who's curious about the human library. Wow. All right. It's time for us to move into breakout rooms to talk a little bit with each other about what struck you about what Geneace just shared. And after we're about 10-15 minutes, we'll come back into the large group, do a little bit of a large group, not a question and answer. We don't like to say Q&A, but you'll be able to ask Geneace some questions if you have them. And then yeah, we'll wrap up. So thank you so much, Geneace, for being with us. And I'm gonna put you all into breakout rooms right now. And yes, the question is, why did you choose, or no, sorry. What struck you about what Geneace just said? So I did see that there was an AI in one of the groups the last time, so I'm gonna try not to count that one. All right. So about 15 minutes in here, opening up now. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right. Now I have lost Geneace. She's on the other. There she is.
Raising my hand so you can see me.
Well, welcome back. So I'm going to open up now and ask what struck you about what Geneace shared today, what you just talked about in your small groups, or if you have anything you want to directly ask Geneace. This is the space, this is the time. Just unmute. Hopefully it doesn't get too. Oh, Betsy actually has her hand raised. So Betsy.
No, Betsy didn't want to talk.
Oh,
Ryan is going for it.
Yeah.
right.
What struck me as a very last minute was learning about the term truth terrorist from Karen. That was very provocative. It's like, oh my goodness, how are you wielding the truth as something terrible? Oof. So that struck me, and I'm still sitting with that. So thank you very little, Karen, for that gift.
Amazing. Truth terrorist. I would be interested in learning more about that.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'll just share. I'm leaving with a question today for myself, and that question is, how does leading with love show up in my own life, whether it's personally or professionally. So I'm reflecting on that, and we'll be reflecting on that for some time. So thank you, Dr. Geneace.
I'd like to mention that I appreciate how Dr. Geneace defined for me what showing up as your whole self could be. I mentioned in our small group that when the DEI movement got some energy in 2020, after the George Floyd murder, everybody was saying, and I too, in the workplace, show up as your whole self, right? When we started designing and redesigning our DEI programs, and folks weren't really clear about it. And I still feel like sometimes people still aren't clear about what it means to show up as your whole self. But hearing you describe how you've done that, Dr. Geneace, really has helped me to think further and I think provide some clarity, even in my direction of people I work with. So I appreciate that.
Amazing, Monica. I remember that article that was like about authenticity, and I don't know, it was that shaped how I show up at work too. Who can really be afforded authenticity in the workplace? Diane.
I just was wondering what the insight or the draw to the Peter Block book and doing a community-wide reading was. I wonder if you could just elaborate a tiny bit on that connection there.
So the draw for me was when I first started doing this work here in the community, one of the things that sort of stood out for me was the idea that if you're working for or with a community, you have to get people engaged, right? And you have to be about community building. And so I really was looking for something or some kind of work that would illumine. What does that look like? What does that mean? How do you go about it? Not that I hadn't done community building previously, because I certainly had done some of that and some of the other equity work that I had done. But this was a particular community, 150,000 people in so many square miles. And so when I started reading his book, and particularly when I ran across this whole idea of helping people understand that it's really about what we can do together, it doesn't do any good for me just to read this myself. Somehow, if I got other people to read it with me, that they could start to embrace some of the ideology that Peter put forth in the book. And if more of us sort of decided that that was a good thing for us, right? To figure out how to build community and how to do it together, that somehow that could spark something different. And so just reading the book and some of the things that I learned from reading the book, and then I actually talked about it with a group of women who were doing a women's panel for another event that we did a few years back. And they were like, yeah, I think that's a good idea if we have the whole community join us in reading this book, because it could potentially, bring a whole lot more people on board. And so that's really how simple it started.
Could I please ask a follow-up about actually designing that space, Dr. Geneace? So, I too am thinking of starting a book club, but frankly, ones I've attended through Zoom have not been exactly the nourishing space that I know is possible even through Zoom. Was it in person? And following this sense of being whole together in our parts, making a new whole together, can you just describe how you designed that study?
Certainly. So it was in person. And I actually designed two versions of it. I designed a version for employees and a version for the community because there were different questions that I wanted the employees to answer around working together than I did want the community to answer. And so I gave them a couple of months to read the book, right? And so there was a July to end of August. People were to read the book. And then there were 5 small sessions where people were broken out into groups. And those groups met. And they talked about in those 4 or 5 sessions, they each talked about some aspect of the book. So I they selected a leader, and that leader helped to put together sort of a syllabus, as you were, in loose terms, of what they would talk about each time around the book. And so people came together and they talked about that. And then after the small groups met, then we came together back as a large group, right? And then we had a conversation as a large group and decided, what did we learn out of this? And what is the one thing that we can do next that will lead us to, so that we're not trying to do 1,000 things. And so from a community standpoint, the next thing that we're doing is, as a community, we're right now working on organizing a some sort of gathering. We haven't decided what that gathering looks like, but we will have a large conversation around community, what that looks like, et cetera. And then we will, in next spring, break off into smaller groups, and those smaller groups will be like supper clubs. And so those small groups will come together and have conversations about things that grew out of the larger conversation. In other words, what we're trying to do is just take a big group, make them a small group so that they can have conversation, and then more and more, hopefully more and more people in the community will decide to join because they'll see that there's some momentum with us. So it's sort of metered out, and we've decided kind of every step of the way how we are going to hopefully make a difference in our community.
Well, in my case, it needs to be online because it's developing international group
Yes.
around the domain actually of listening. So any difference?
Well, probably so. And let me just tell you what Peter. So when we kicked off our book read, we did we had a live audience, and then we had people who were online, and then Peter was online leading the discussion because he no longer travels. And so the question was, is this really going to work, right? With Peter online, some other people online, and some people in the room. And it actually worked. And so there was a professor from the local university who came forth and asked the question. He says, Peter, if we have to do this on Zoom, how do we make this work? And he said, breakout rooms. That's how you get people into community, and you spawn community from these breakout groups. You get questions in those conversations, and you get people connecting, and it actually works. And so in a lot of the things that I have tried to do that had to be online, like a lot of the things I had to do at first when I came here in 2021 had to be online, but it was the use of breakout rooms. It was smaller groups coming together versus, something like this. It was, how do we get 5 people together? How do we get 6 people together? And when you have a more intimate setting, people have a tendency to feel a little bit more comfortable. And so I'm giving you Peter's answer. That's what Peter told the gentleman that asked the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
I just, if I might, Maya, I just want to, and I hope I won't get in trouble for this, but I mentioned earlier that we did the human library. and that actually we've done several things, and we partnered with the Naperville Library in doing that, or that was one of our partners, and they've been a partner in other things as well. And so one of my partners from the library is actually online today, and I'm just so thrilled to see her. She has been active in the work since I set foot into Naperville. She's been active in the work, either through the library or through her local church. And it's just so nice to see her here and to know that the partnership that we at the city has built with the library is lasting and is impactful. So I'm just glad. I just wanted to say that.
Wonderful. Thank you for the shout out. And thank you, whoever you are, if you want to get unmute, say hi, feel free. We appreciate you and your work. All right, everyone, we are at the end of our time. We're a little bit over, so thank you all for hanging out. I know I could stay here the whole rest of the day and be happy. I did share some links. If you would like to go check them out, feel free. We do this every last Friday of the month, so you're all now on our lists. You can unsubscribe if you want, but if you don't want, you will be receiving these emails every month, invitations to join. And as always, if you are interested in ever coming and sharing your story, please do so. We all have a story to tell, and it's all important. So happy Friday, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of May and start to June. Thank you so much, Geneace. Thank
Here,
you.
yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Geneace, I
Take
had
care.
a small question if you have time.
Yes, I do.
Do you find it challenging, like more challenging nowadays than before, to create those relationships and connections?
No, I don't.
Okay.
And probably because I made some decisions at the very beginning of this work, and I've been dabbling in this work probably for 20 years. Um, but there are 3 or 4 different kinds of people in the world. There are the people who are gung-ho, DEI, let's go forward, let's do this thing. There are those that are the skeptics who are on the edge. You might win them over. Then there's those that don't believe in it, and then there's those who fight against it. So there are 4 kinds of people. So those who don't believe in it and those who fight against it, I don't even bother with them. I just don't. I spend my time on people who have an interest in the work or who can be persuaded that this really is a good, this is a really good path to be on. And I'll tell you a little bit a story. I have some people that I work with who are overwhelmed with what's happening nationally. I mean, absolutely overwhelmed. And they bring that to work. And I keep saying to them, we got to control what we can control. We got to do our part. We got to stay focused on what it is that we're here to do in our community, and not get lost in what's happening nationally. And so I try to encourage people around staying focused on what it is that you can do, staying focused on being positive yourself, and then where you can lend a hand, where you can lift people up, continuing in that journey. And I really do block out a lot. I just, because I can't feel myself with that. If I do, then I'd be, on the side of the road somewhere. But it's a choice. And it's the choice that I've made. And I think it's an important choice because if I'm going to lead this work, I got to stay in the right frame of mind. And that's sort of, and so I still have great conversations with people. People still have great conversations with me, and we keep it moving.
I love that. And yeah, it's the words that like always resonate with me is the choice. And I have a lot of like difficult conversation with people because I tell them like you're showing up. However you're showing up, why did you make that choice? What's
Yep.
the intention behind it? And everything that we make is a choice in this life. What's the intention, and have you taken the time to think about the impact? And I'm inviting you. The invitation is open, but I'm not inviting you to take all my energy out. I need that to keep on going.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yes.